Good morning, everyone. Welcome to HVAC to HP, Why Smart Companies Are Moving to Home Performance, the California Opportunity. My name is Chris Cohn. I am Policy Manager with Efficiency First California, and I will be your moderator this morning on behalf of Build It Green and PG&E, which are sponsoring today's webinar. And if you will, there we go. Okay, so I'd like to start out by welcoming our Energy Upgrade California home upgrade participating contractors. Your work in the home upgrade program and advanced home upgrade programs are delivering effective energy efficiency services to residents throughout the PG&E territory. As you can see from the slide, within the 9-county Bay Area, the Bay Area Regional Energy Network is the administrator of the home upgrade program, and then Build It Green handles the program for PG&E throughout the rest of the PG&E territory. So welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you on the call today. And then also would like to welcome participating contractors in PG&E's AC Quality Care Rebate Program. Again, delivering services to customers throughout the PG&E territory and the Bay Area. Welcome and thank you for all your good work. Today's presentation will be given by one of our favorite presenters, Mike Rogers. He is has extensive experience in home performance contracting and runs a consulting company in this area, and is very expert in how to lay the foundation for success using a whole business approach. And I will let Mike talk about his background when he starts his presentation. I have a couple of upcoming events to tell everyone about. On February 25th, we will hold our next webinar. It will be part one of a two-part series, a practical guide to home energy financing. In the two-part series, we will provide an overview of the current and best financing services available, and then an apples-to-apples comparison of those products, how to use them, what the eligibility requirements are for homeowners, contractor requirements, and other data points that will allow you to assess the products and understand which product would be a good fit for a particular client. So put that on your calendar. You will be receiving emails about the next webinar opportunity as well from Build It Green. Then for those of you on the line who are participating contractors in the Energy Upgrade California Home Upgrade Program, on March 4th there is a contractor exchange event. It will be an all-day event at the San Ramon Valley Conference Center. At this event, there will be a presentation of the program updates and a vision for the coming year. There will be two featured keynote speakers, Denny Duche from Inspired Business Development and Peter Trost from Energy Circle. The event will also include some new breakout sessions involving innovative strategies for growing business, as well as an Overcoming Obstacles Roundtable. And BPI CEUs are pending for this event. And finally, before we get into the presentation, just wanted to remind everyone that you should have a control panel on your screen that has a questions pane. You can enter questions at any time during the presentation and they will come to me. And we will be holding a Q&A session at the end for about a half an hour, so that we can make sure that all your questions are answered and we have a good dialogue about the material that Mike will be addressing. And finally, before we begin the presentation and hand the microphone over to Mike, I just want to mention that today's webinar is approved for up to 1.5 BPI continuing education units for those of you that hold BPI certifications. And we will be submitting our attendee report, and you will be able to collect those credits toward your recertification process. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to hand the presentation over to Mike. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks for folks who have joined us. And I'm looking at the screen right now, seeing that I have a misplaced comma on the date, but let's not worry about that too much. I am very happy to be able to speak with you about this topic because the intersection of HVAC and home performance, I think, is probably the most exciting thing, both in the HVAC world and in the home performance world. Go ahead to the next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my bio, but I will dial the clock back to 2005 when I joined a company called Green Homes America, and then for 6 years up until just over a year ago at the end of 2012, I left the company, and we took it from 0 locations to 30 around the country, focusing particularly on this HVAC home performance intersection, starting with the premise that the HVAC contractors have some pretty neat advantages in terms of taking care of people in their home. And if we think about heating, ventilating, air conditioning, not in terms of a box, a piece of equipment, but holistically, home performance really is about heating, ventilating, air conditioning a house and doing it the right way, the best way. So what I'm going to be talking to you about is based on real-world experience, both in my time at Green Homes and the a little over a year since, where I've had the pleasure of working with HVAC contractors, running HVAC locations. In our company-owned locations, the general managers actually reported up to me. So this is real. We're not making this stuff up. I actually get goosebumps when I think about the opportunity for an HVAC contractor adding home performance into their existing business. Next, please. So what we're going to talk about is, in fact, that opportunity. Increasing revenue, profits, differentiating yourself not just from other HVAC contractors, but from others in the home performance arena, because I think you have the ability to do that. We'll talk about some of the advantages, including seasonality and the ability to reduce the big up and down swings that most folks in the HVAC world have. And I'll certainly touch on the advantages an HVAC contractor has. Now, the purpose today here is really to talk about why you should be paying attention to this. We will have some time during the question period to get into the what. As Chris mentioned, the contractor exchange coming up in just under a month from now. We'll actually have a couple of sessions that will focus very much on the how. How do I make this work from a marketing to the execution side? But time permitting, I'm happy to dive into any of those questions a little bit later on. Next, please. So one of the reasons that I love the HVAC angle, the HVAC foundation for home performance, really rests squarely with this particular question. What's the best source of your business? Now, if we were in a live setting, I'd be going around the room and we get some answers, but think about it right now. And I asked this in the context, well, at the end of last year, I was down in San Diego. Affordable Comfort had a regional event down there, and I watched, some of you in fact may have been there, I watched a panel of contractors up on the stage to kick off the event talking about their inability to attract customers, to generate leads as being the biggest challenge they were facing. And I just thought, wow, I don't think there's any HVAC contractors up on that stage. So go ahead to the next slide. Now, when I ask this question, a lot of people will say, give me one more click there too, that it's referrals. And referrals are great. They should be the second best source of business. Those of you in the HVAC world probably already know where I'm going with the next slide. The best leads are, of course, one more click, your existing customers. Now, HVAC contractors, even smaller HVAC contractors, have literally thousands of active customers. We can talk about what active customer means. In the ideal world, it's a customer who's on a service agreement, service or maintenance agreement. But we can broaden that to any customer you've served over the last few years. You can consider them an existing customer. And contractors who actively maintain those relationships with those customers and mine that customer base have a pretty easy time establishing a solid foundation of business. Now, I said easy, relatively speaking. It's work. It's always work. You have to continue to work on it. But it's a lot easier than just about anybody else in the contracting world has to work, because we already have a relationship. I'm going to come back to that more in a little bit. Next, please. All right, so let's back up and talk about what that opportunity here looks like in the typical home. Next, please. We know homeowners have problems. Now, you'll see somewhere down there on the bottom, the lower right-hand corner, old HVAC systems. If you're an HVAC contractor, that may be where you're focused. But I suspect not just that. The HVAC industry has really been well ahead on this issue for at least a couple of decades, focusing on comfort, on indoor air quality. I'm sitting talking to you right now up in Burlington, Vermont, where we got a foot of snow last night, and it's about 15 degrees out. So we have cold rooms, we have drafts. You might have hot rooms in the summertime. I've heard there's parts of California that it gets a little warm in the summer, especially if you happen to be in the valleys there. People can also be concerned about dust, indoor air quality, allergies, energy bills. I put that down on the bottom because while it can be a driver from time to time, I don't find it to be the predominant driver. The point is there's lots of different problems here. Next slide. Whoops, are we doing a little poll question here?
Yes, Mike?
I lost that. I see we do have the poll up.
Yes.
I actually meant to, pardon me, ask this question a couple slides ago, but please take a moment. I'm here obviously talking about an HVAC industry, but let's see what kind of folks we've got in the room. If you're an HVAC business, are you already doing something like HomePerformance? Do you offer your customers insulation, air sealing? Do you offer them solar? All of the above. Or, and I know several of the attendees, are you here finding out what that HVAC opportunity is all about, because you might not offer HomePerformance yet, but you're thinking about it. Okay, so about 60% of you're in the HVAC business. And 40% of you might be participating in the energy upgrade program already, because you're already offering insulation and air sealing. Great. I hope to reinforce that. For the 20% of you who aren't doing that yet, let's talk some more about what that opportunity is. And for the other 40%, we're going to learn more about what the HVAC advantage is, and maybe you're going to be looking at more closely partnering or even bringing it in-house. There's actually a number of successful, what I'll call HomePerformance, weatherization type companies who have figured out that they absolutely need HVAC as a cornerstone of their business. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, so we just showed in the previous slide a bunch of different problems. From hot rooms or indoor air quality to dust, even to HVAC equipment replacement. If you understand these problems, in the underlying causes of them, and if you can offer real solutions to the problems, solutions to the problems that people care about, not necessarily solutions to the building science problem, although they wind up being the same thing. I'm alluding right now to the sales process. How we talk about these things actually becomes real important. But if you can offer real solutions that people care about, you've got an opportunity. Next, please. Now, we know that most houses don't work really well, even homes that were built within the last couple of years. Next, please. There's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, air leakage. And air leakage, by the way, is not just a cold climate issue. Yes, it's worse with the stack effect in cold climates. But even if you're in a mixed or a hot climate, you have things called wind, which can create pressure differences from inside to outside. You have mechanical systems, which can also create pressure differences. If you have pressure differences and you have leakage pathways, you're going to have leakage. You're going to be trading that indoor and outdoor air, including in ways that you might not really want to. Next slide, please. All sorts of insulation deficiencies. Now, somebody 20, 30 years ago determined that insulation wasn't as important in a hot climate. It absolutely is. Insulation slows heat transfer. It's not about keeping things warm. It's about slowing heat transfer. If you have a cold beer on a hot day and you stick it in a little beer cozy, you're doing that to keep the beer cold. If you have a well-insulated house that you're pumping cool air into in the summertime, that insulation helps block the heat from outside and keep the house cool and comfortable. So many homes in California, you pop up into the attic and you can see the top of the sheetrock because there's no insulation, or the insulation is installed so poorly it might as well not be there. Next, please. Leaky ducts. We put in a 15 SEER, 16 SEER piece of equipment, but we attach it to ductwork. And even with Title 24 in California, most of that new equipment is going and getting attached to ductwork that nationally averages about 30% leakage. With 30% of the air that we're pumping through the ducts is going directly outside or indirectly outside through a crawl space or attic. It's not getting delivered to the bedroom, the living room. It's not getting delivered to where your customers want it to be delivered. So we've got air leaks, we've got bad insulation, we've got leaky ductwork. Next, please. And we've got a bunch of inefficient lighting and appliances that are making things worse. I often tell this story, and we were in Fresno in many of the homes in California. One-story ranch house, slab on grade. Because it was a ranch house, deep space. Far away, a lot of the space was far away from the windows. They had 75 recessed can lights, each with an incandescent lamp in them. So what do they do in the middle of the summer? Even in the middle of the summer, they have to come home and turn the lights on because it's dark inside. So they turn the lights on. Well, they've got all these little space heaters up there. Every one of those recessed can lights was also a leakage pathway to the attic. The supply ducts up in the attic were leaky. Every time the air handler came on to both cool the house because of the outside temperature and because we were heating it with a bunch of little space heaters, the supply leaks caused the house to go negative with respect to the attic. So we start pulling air down from the attic. Well, that attic air could be 140, 150 degrees. We're pulling that down into the space, along with it, insulation, particulate, dust, mouse poop, whatever you might find up in an attic. We're sucking down through all the gaps around our recessed lighting. So we've got an air handler battling the outdoor temperature. It's battling the inefficient lighting in the house, and now it's battling itself because every time that air handler kicks on, it's sucking in 140-degree air. Boy, what an impact we were able to make in this house in Fresno by simple things like sealing the recessed lighting. At this particular point, a lot of that lighting got replaced with compact fluorescent. We couldn't do it all because there were a few that they really wanted dimmable. The technology wasn't good enough. Now with LED lighting, we could have replaced all of them with some really spectacular lighting. It's just as good as the incandescent lighting it's replacing from a light quality perspective, and a whole lot more efficient. We added some insulation. We sealed the ductwork. Wow, now they're actually able to keep their house cool. They're much more comfortable. Their dust problem has gone down. Now we get real careful about health claims, but the daughter who has asthma didn't have to go to the hospital, the emergency room, 3 times. You know, when we walked into her house and did a little finger swipe on the dresser, the dust and particulate primarily driven through these leakage pathways was just amazing. We greatly, greatly reduced that. We were able to deliver a comfort, a dust and air quality solution to them, to these customers that just kind of blew their minds. And they were delighted to pay. So we didn't actually swap out the piece of equipment, which was what they called about, by the way. We're pretty sure at some point down the road, when it's time to change that equipment, we're going to get that business as well. Next, please. Think about this for a moment, and let's go ahead and pop a poll question up so we can get a little bit of feedback from you. What is your average installation ticket size? Now, this number varies greatly. A good national average is in the range of $6,500, and I'm not talking about a service ticket, an install. We're replacing a piece of equipment. About 65, but that varies. That's a good national average, but it varies tremendously based on where you are, what your cost structures or your pricing structures are, also based on your climate. If you're putting in just heating systems or just cooling systems predominantly, the average ticket size is a little bit lower. If you're in a strong mixed climate where you have to address both of those, the average goes up. But let's take a look, see where you're at here. Okay, so wow, the biggest percentage, 9,000 to 12,000. That's great. 7,000 to 9,000. That's where I would have expected most of you in California to be, given your price structures. Those below 7,000, let's talk here. There's a couple of you, it looks, or some of you that are up above 12,000. That's good too. Let's figure out how we can move everybody above 12,000. And next slide, please. As we do this, I'd like to give you a little bit of a mental framework to think about it, because $80,000 is sort of the figure I use when I drive up to the average house. I'm not talking about this 7,000 square foot McMansion here. I'm talking about your average house. Your average house has about $80,000 worth of home performance related work that could be done. We're talking attic insulation, air sealing, duct replacement, wall insulation, could be talking about windows, maybe we're talking about some lighting retrofits. Oh yeah, there's an HVAC system in there too. Next slide, please. If you don't like that $80,000 number, pick your own number. It's a whole lot more than $10,000 or $20,000 though, I can assure you that. And again, this is your average house. I'm not talking about larger houses with multiple systems. Now, you have a choice, and most contractors, and unfortunately, even most HVAC contractors, take what I call is an eat what you kill approach. You go out, you work really hard to find a customer, you do something for them, and then you walk away and never go back. If you do that, you're missing a huge opportunity, because most people are not going to buy that full $80,000 worth of potential opportunity on the first visit. Almost no one will. Even myself, with a very expensive hobby of buying old houses and living in them, and trying to push them towards zero energy, even I don't spend all that money all at once most of the time. So most of your customers aren't. The only way you're going to chip away at that $80,000 is by going back over and over and over again, representing opportunities, not in an annoying way, in a helpful way that's going to deliver them solutions to stuff they care about. What you'll find is, over time, as you start presenting solutions, people start saying yes. And they start saying yes to things beyond what they called for. Yes, I need a new air conditioner, but while you're at it, why don't we talk about insulating and air sealing my attic? Or why don't we talk about insulating my west-facing wall? Now, wall insulation, a lot of areas of California, it's not the big driver, but you get a south-facing or west-facing wall that is sun-loaded and that stucco's baking all day, and then driving heat back into the house, as we move into the late evening and nighttime hours. You insulate that wall, you can start making dramatic comfort impacts literally within an hour or two of doing the work, allowing that the sheetrock on the inside to cool down and bring that closer to room temperature rather than outdoor temperature or outdoor temperature plus, depending on how much sun loading is going on. So I want you to keep that, and again, if you don't like the 8,000, pick your own number, but it's a number bigger than your average HVAC installation ticket is right now. So keep that in mind as we roll forward here. Next, please. How are we going to help them do this? Next. We're going to help them do this by, as I said, by chipping away at this over time. Going back to what I talked about, the eat what you kill mentality. What's an average customer acquisition cost? Now, we're not going to do a little poll here. I'll give you a time, pick a number. When I ask this question to most contractors, and by the way, when we're talking about new customer acquisition, I don't think HVAC contractors have any advantage here. A new customer costs about what a new customer costs, whether you're in an insulation business or an HVAC business or installing windows. What I hear most of the time is somewhere in the range of $300 to $350. Don't like that number? That's okay. Use whatever number you want. Next slide, please. Let's say it is $300. That's not cheap. Now, do you want, some of you said you have projects less than $5,000 or less than $7,000. You can, if you will, amortize that cost of a new customer across a smaller job, a $5,000 job, or you can spread it across jobs that average $15,000. And if you can do that, spread your advertising and customer acquisition costs across a larger job, well, it's a lot more easy to justify your marketing dollars spent. It's also a lot easier to be profitable, to go for that, what's unfortunately too elusive for most contractors, that double-digit net profit, money that you can either plow back into your business for growth or pull out and give yourself a raise or a bonus or just build the equity of the company. So if you take, now that's just from a single installation perspective. What if we take it even further and say, all right, that's $300, $350 we're spending to find a new customer. What if I get to spread that out over not $5,000 or $15,000, but that's going to help me chip away at that $80,000 worth of potential in every house. If you're only offering single solutions, you're not going to be able to do that. There's no way you can get $80,000 worth of potential if you're only selling heating and cooling equipment, for example. Next, please. All right, I'm supposed to be talking about HVAC and home performance. I am. Next. I'm touching on one of the key advantages that HVAC contractors have. Whoops, did we lose a poll here?
No, this is Chris. No, we conducted the second poll a little bit earlier in the presentation.
Okay.
So we're on track.
I had something flash up on my screen there for a moment. All right, so let's talk about why some of the leading HVAC contractors are doing this. There's one, these guys are from all around the country. One, ABC Cooling, has actually in the PG&E service territory in the last couple of years, they were the highest volume producer in the Energy Upgrade California program. If you talk to Jerry Under, by the way, who happens to be the owner of ABC, he'll talk about how much he likes the program. He'll also talk about how much the basic tenets of Energy Upgrade fit his business, that if that program were to go away tomorrow, he would essentially, other than maybe submitting some reports and forms and applications for processing, he wouldn't fundamentally change his business. It works too well. His sales guys love it. They love going out and selling $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 projects. That's why these other guys around the country are getting into it. That's why ACA, who didn't want to have anything to do with building performance or home performance a decade ago, has for the last couple of years been hosting a conference, a building performance conference. That's why Carrier, going on 2 years ago, kicked off its 360 or Energy Experts program, recognizing that the dealers who were embracing home performance, it's funny, the manufacturers call contractors dealers. I hope you don't think of yourself as a equipment manufacturing dealer. Think of yourself as providing solutions to homeowners. But anyway, getting back to the main point here, Carrier saw its dealers who were embracing home performance growing even during the sharp downturn that we had. What are we dialing back the clock about 5-6 years ago at this point now? As the rest of the contracting industry started tanking, there were these little rays of light. How are you growing? How are you growing right now? And some of these guys were adding millions of dollars a year to their business. And they were saying, well, we're adding home performance in. We're selling additional stuff. Oh, as we sell additional stuff and make clients happier, we're also selling more heating and cooling equipment. So there's a reason that these guys are doing it, and they're doing it because it makes a lot of sense. Some of Air Right, Larry Taylor in Texas, although Larry just actually sold his company in the last year or so, he's been doing this, taking this approach for more than 15 years. And he'll talk about why I'm increasing my revenue, I'm increasing my margins. Next slide, please. And that's really what it boils down to. It makes sense. It completely changes the HVAC game by allowing you to grow the revenue. The incremental stuff you'd be adding on to your HVAC business is generally, especially on the insulation and air sealing, at higher margins than you're used to on your typical changeout. Because you're getting higher revenue, higher margins, you're spreading your other costs, your overhead costs, your marketing costs over higher revenue amounts. You're increasing profits at the same time. This is great. You're differentiating yourself because even the best system, pick Lennox, pick Carrier, their top-of-the-line product, doesn't matter. The best system you put in with the most advanced zoning is not going to deliver comfort the way that taking control of that whole home, taking control of the shell of the house, how heat moves in and out across that attic plane, through the windows, through the walls, etc., and then applying your HVAC solution to it. So some of these guys, they didn't believe it, they didn't believe it, they did it in their own house, then they started believing it. And I heard time and time again from owners of HVAC businesses who've been doing this for 30 years saying, we've been doing it wrong for 30 years. And now they understand how to do it right. And they understand how to do it right and smile because they're making more money doing it the right way. They're making their customers happy by doing it the right way. They're charging their customers more. Their customers are happy to pay more because they're actually getting the results that they want to see. That's why this stuff is so exciting. And the guys who get into it today are grabbing market share. If you're not doing this, there's a good chance you're losing out to somebody else who is growing their business right now. And as I said at the beginning, there's companies who haven't been in HVAC at all who recognize the opportunity to blend HVAC and home performance, who are actually building their HVAC business. Now, some of them are growing it organically internally. A few of them are doing it by acquisition. But the point is, if you're an HVAC company, your old competitors, the ones who are adopting this stuff, you risk them pulling away and gobbling up market share. And you're getting in new competitors coming at you who might be able to do the same thing. You have a real opportunity here to capture the flag and become move up. If you're not the dominant, move into that dominant role or start climbing the ladder, and being in that top tier of contractors with the biggest market share that allows you to do some other fun things and grow your marketing budget, make it easier to pay your folks more and retain them and keep the best people around. Next, please. All right, so let's look at this, how this breaks down. And earlier I asked you what your average ticket was, so don't focus on what the total is, focus on the difference. Focus on the difference between HVAC and HVAC plus something else. So if the average nationally is about $6,500, it very routinely I've seen companies add $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to their average ticket size. I've seen companies double or more than double their average ticket size. I don't like to over-promise here and tell you that it's bigger. Then you'll see. I feel really comfortable with a conservative number saying you should be pretty easily able to grow your average ticket size by $3,000 or $4,000. That's a big deal. You should also be able to grow your gross margins by somewhere on between 5 and 10 percentage points, and that's blended, combined over that total revenue, both the old revenue that you were getting and the new incremental revenue that you're adding on top. Higher revenue, higher margins, and close rates that are as good or better. Gosh, I hope you're doing better than 35%, but I look around and I see a lot of companies aren't doing better. I'd love everybody to be up above 50%. I've never seen anybody add home performance in and have their overall close rates go down. Sometimes they don't go up. Sometimes they stay the same. Sometimes they actually go up significantly, and a little bit of that's beyond your control because I think for the guys where it goes up significantly, that they've tended to be, either they were doing something wrong and had a lot of room for improvement and they figured it out and improved, or they were in markets where they didn't have other competition doing this yet. So back to what I said just a few moments ago, they started stealing business from a lot of their competitors. They were leaving them behind. I don't think your close rate really depends on your fundamental sales ability, not necessarily just the home performance. But in the early days, you actually have an ability here to nudge that up by being so much better than everybody else as they struggle to figure this out over the next 5 years or so. Next, please. So think about those numbers. Think about what it would be to add even $3,000, $4,000 to your average ticket size and add a few points of margin, and to differentiate yourself, make it a little bit easier to get leads, spread your marketing costs, this means you can be more profitable. That is why contractors are doing this. Now, I love the programs here. I'll talk about the programs at the end, but I don't think anybody should get into this because there is a program. I think you should get into this because there's a business opportunity. And if you see the business opportunity, you know, double down, go all in, because it's enormous. If you don't see the business opportunity, then I'd caution you about trying to play with the program too much, because it is complicated. You're adding new stuff into your business makes it more complicated, and then adding the program on top of that, it takes it up another step or two in terms of complication. If you don't believe it, then you're not going to invest in it, and you're just adding a lot of complication and headache. But if you can figure out how to make the business end of it work, and you can if you've got a good solid HVAC company, then the program just opens up tons of additional opportunity, makes it a little bit easier for your customers to go a little bit further, a little bit deeper. And you'll find that with some of the training, the other resources take some of your cost away as well. Enough on that. Let's keep going about the fundamental business here. Okay, so in addition to bigger revenue, bigger margins, bigger profitability, you get to stand apart, differentiate yourself. You know, if you're actually taking a look at the whole house and finding the root source of a problem, rather than applying the, you know, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail approach, you can actually apply the right solution to the specific problem they're having. It may not be a new piece of equipment that they need, or that's going to deliver them the most comfort or the most savings or the better indoor air quality. Maybe it's something else, and if you can do the something else too, you win. Next, please. Time and time again, you'll see this. Now, one of the challenges is the projects look a little bit different. Let's say, you know, if you're used to doing installs in a day, you have to get into a different type of project management because your projects, you know, that additional revenue means you're doing additional stuff. That might mean one-day projects turn into 2- and 3-day projects now. Some of the neat things that happen, though, you're 1 day into a 3-day project, you show up at the beginning of the second day and the homeowner's hugging your crew guys because they can already feel the difference. You're not even done with the project yet, and they can already feel the difference. I mentioned, you know, vents packing a wall in a master bedroom and having them be able to tell within an hour that the room is more comfortable. The thermostat on the wall still read the same thing, but they were just so much more comfortable because we've cooled that wall surface. They don't have they're not seeing a wall that's 80 degrees and have a mean radiant temperature that's affecting their comfort level. They now have a wall that's the same as the air temperature. The mean radiant temperature's down. They feel more comfortable. They feel that instantly. Next, please. All right, there's other neat things that go on. Now, everybody in the HVAC industry faces some degree of seasonality. Your curves are going to look different depending on where you are. You know, the curve in Oakland looks different than it does in Fresno, and it's different than it is in San Diego. It's certainly different than it is in Burlington, Vermont. So draw your own picture when your busy period is and when your slow shoulder months are. You face some seasonality. Next, please. You're not alone. You know, all trades have that seasonality. We don't see too many window replacements, for example, in the winter. I think it's because people think you drive up to your house, pull all their windows away, drive away, come back the next day and start putting them back in. You know, in reality, there's other than on an extreme condition day, there's nothing that would prevent you from replacing windows in the winter, but that's not what the public thinks. That's not what your potential customers think, so it doesn't happen. People think of insulation more as a cold weather thing rather than a hot weather thing. So we see more requests for insulation. We see some seasonality in the residential service business, not new construction, that kind of skews towards the winter months. So all these different trades have their own little seasonality. The neat thing with home performance is, next please, you start leveling some of this out. And if you can take seasonality away, next slide please. If you can take that seasonality away and keep your people busy all the time, keep those trucks not parked in your parking lot, but out on the street at people's homes installing stuff, again, you increase margins, you increase profitability by fully utilizing the stuff that you've invested in. And there's a couple of reasons why this happens. Next, please. Whoops, one more. First, there are more things to make the phone ring. Think about it. If all you can advertise is heating, cooling, furnaces, air conditioners, different regions of the country, I'll talk about this stuff differently, but if all you can advertise is furnaces, air conditioners, that's all that someone is going to call you for. If you can start adding different services, you've got more opportunity to pick up the phone, for someone else to pick up the phone to call you. That goes hand in hand with the next, please. The fact that every time you visit the house, if you go in with an open mind and actually take a look at the whole house, figure out what the customer's underlying needs really are, and the stuff that they value, care about, are willing to pay for, you'll find that as often as not, they are willing to go beyond the reason they called you. I called for an air conditioner, and you come out and you tell me I need attic insulation and air sealing. Well, about half the time, the customer's going to say, I can't do that right now. I just need the air conditioner. About half the time. The other half the time, they're going to, okay, let's do that at insulation and air sealing too. You know what? 50% of the time, they're going to do what I would call an additional major measure. Maybe they're going to address some windows. Maybe they're going to do some insulation and air sealing. That's how, 50% of the time, that's how we bump up that average ticket size. Now, of course, we're going to build that relationship and go back time and time again. But if you can increase the number of ways that your phone will ring, and then when you show up at the house, have the confidence to go in and look not just at the thing they called you about, but what's really going on, and ask good questions and find out what they care about. Most people don't care about their air conditioner or what brand it is or what color it is. Some people do, but most people don't. They want their daughter's bedroom to be more cool all summer. And if you can help them make their daughter's bedroom more cool all summer, they're going to pay for it. And if it means buying not just an air conditioner, but that attic insulation, air sealing, wall insulation, what have you, they will do that too. Next, please. So let's talk about why I think an HVAC contractor is extremely well positioned, better than just about any other trade, to be able to do this. There's several reasons. It boils down to, in my mind, though, the first two. I mentioned at the beginning, even smaller companies, if we talk about active customer-based existing customers, you can be thousands. Bigger companies literally have tens of thousands of customers that they've served over the last few years. Even smaller companies, the number can quickly hit thousands of customers that you've served over the last couple of years. That's enormous if we remember that $80,000 worth of potential, and almost none of our thousands of customers have fully tapped out that potential. Then the second thing HVAC contractors have with these existing customers is service techs. And service techs, in addition to being out there generating revenue for us, you know, they're fixing stuff. Those are billable hours. We get to charge the customer. We're, you know, replacing a blower motor. We're fixing the condenser, what have you. You know, there's all sorts of things that service techs are doing to generate revenue for us. They can do another thing. They can be generating leads for us more effective than any other lead generation mechanism that I've seen. Next, please. Let's tease this out a little bit. Talk about the service tech leads. And going back to that ACI conference at the end of last year and seeing these guys up on the stage, you know, really struggling with looking for help with lead generation. I happened to know who they were, and I knew they weren't in HVAC. Even if they had been, I could have, even if I hadn't known them, I could have told you that they weren't in HVAC, because the HVAC guys that I know that are doing this really well and adding home performance on are not struggling for home performance leads because they have service techs. Next. All right, let's think about it. Pick your number. 20, 25 homes a week. That's how many a service. And I say service, I actually mean service or maintenance techs. Some companies, they're two different animals. You know, if you've read Ron Smith's book, he'll tell you why they should be two different animals. You can train a maintenance tech a lot easier, and it actually gives you an onboarding opportunity in a career path, get somebody into the maintenance arena over time, train them on your company and the culture in addition to the technical stuff. And those who have the ability can move into the more complicated service arena. That's on the side. Techs are in homes. Call it 20, 25 homes a week. Now let's think about these homes and the people who live in them. These folks have invited us into their house. We have a relationship with us. We have a relationship with them. They trust us. Again, they've invited us there. They're paying us to do something. We've cleared one of the biggest contracting hurdles. Somebody trusting you enough to do work with you. They already do. They have many problems in their homes. $80,000 worth of problems. Remember, it's not just the blower motor. There's other stuff going on in their home, be it duct work, be it bad insulation, air sealing, single pane windows that essentially turn their family room into a solar oven for good parts of the year and for long hours of the day, all sorts of things going on. So we have people that they trust already in their homes, and there's big, hairy problems in their home. And we get to go visit them. Maybe if we've got them on an agreement, we get to take a look at those problems and have a conversation with them, not just one time, but over and over and over again. And we're not paying to have that conversation. They're actually paying us to be there. Wonderful opportunity. How this works, and at the exchange next month, if you happen to attend that the session on how this works, we can dive a little bit more into it. But go to the next slide, please. Here's essentially what we want to teach these techs to do, and it's not that different from what you should be teaching them already, even if you're just sticking to a core HVAC business. You know, you're going to teach them what to look for and how to talk about it with the homeowners and how to get the homeowner to take the next step. There's some wrinkles here. So we're not just talking about HVAC equipment, so we're going to give them an overview. Call it Building Science 101. Maybe Building Science 101 is actually even too far, because we're not turning these people into diagnosticians or auditors, or they're not going to be necessarily doing all the full assessment or audit on the house. We're just training them to understand how the pieces of the house fit together and what big, hairy problems look like. And we're teaching them to look for those problems. And the good thing is, a lot of the problems are going to be where these guys are already, up in attics, or some parts of California down in a crawl space. That's where they're going to find a lot of the big, hairy problems. Then we're going to teach them to practice over and over and over again and be able to describe that big, hairy problem in just a couple of sentences in a way that my mom would understand. So when they come down out of the attic, they can say, Mrs. Rogers, while we were up in the attic, I saw these big holes leading from the attic all the way down, down to the crawl space. Or I saw this big area over here with no insulation, and that's why your daughter's bedroom is cold. And then we get them to be able to explain that problem in just a couple of sentences. Now think about it. This isn't some abstract marketing now. This is an actual problem that I took a picture of while I was up in your attic, and I'm coming down and showing it to you. And then I just want to do the next step. Can I call the office and schedule an appointment for one of our advisors to come take a look at this? Because I think we can really make your daughter's bedroom more comfortable. Essentially, we're just training those service techs to have a 3 or 4 sentence conversation with the homeowner leading up to the point where we ask that question, can we call the office and get somebody scheduled to come out here and take a look at this for you? And it absolutely works. Now, it doesn't work with every homeowner. In my experience, it works about 5 to 10% of the time. But think about it. If it's 5% of the time, a service tech's still generating a lead. If it's 10% of the time, that might be 2 to 3 leads a week. Multiply that by 5 techs or 10 techs, and you can keep somebody busy looking at the entire house and selling much bigger projects that you're probably missing out on the opportunity right now. Lead generation for an HVAC company becomes pretty simple. It becomes pretty low risk. You step into this according to the ability of your service techs to be able to generate those leads. Now, yes, you always want new customers too. That's just as complicated as for new customers right now. No easier, no harder. But within your existing customer base, with some good training to your service techs, and they can be trained on this in a matter of months in small, bite-sized chunks, 30-minute sessions once a week during their regular meeting on Tuesday morning before they all roll out and go their separate ways. Totally doable. The cheapest leads you'll ever have, and also the best leads you'll ever have. These leads often close, upwards of 90%, because again, the customers trust you already. They already have a relationship with you. Next, please. So I told you, don't get into this because of the program. Get into it because it makes sense. Well, once you've figured out how it makes sense for your business, the good news is the program actually does make sense. Some of the most generous incentives available anywhere in the country are dangling out there for you to take advantage of and for you to be able to offer your customers. So the good news there is, if you figure this out from a business perspective, boy, that program starts looking really, really attractive. Going the other way, just looking at the program and looking at the dollar amounts, but not figuring out how it works as a business, that's not quite as exciting to me. The good news is it actually does make sense as a business. And then when I see rebates up to $4,500 back, wow, okay, I can do that. Next, please. That said, I get excited about the opportunity, but there's nothing really extremely easy about residential contracting, the residential service business. It is work. It's hard work, and I don't want to minimize that. And I don't want to oversell the magic of home performance. Home performance works extremely well if you're building on a solid foundation, building on a solid HVAC foundation. So, and what do I mean by that foundation? Well, the agreement base. I mean, that's HVAC Business 101. Let's build our agreement base. So if you don't have a big agreement base, that's something to think about. Can we pop to a poll question? I think you have one more for me there, Chris. Perfect time to raise it. So talking about that agreement base, let's see where you guys are at right now. Obviously, those of you who said you don't have an HVAC company, you probably don't have an HVAC service maintenance agreement base, but let's hear where the rest of you are at. I'll give it another 5 seconds. Okay, none. If any of the folks who answered none are in the HVAC business, we have your next step. I mean, that's one of the things you need to start working on. Less than 500, you may need to be working on that too. More than 2,000, I don't know how big your business is, but well, I get excited when I start seeing more than 2,000 service agreements. Now, the rule of thumb that you'll hear batted around is for about every $1 million worth of business you do, you should have 1,000 service agreements. I don't actually know anyone who meets that rule of thumb. The rule of thumb I use is actually about 700 service agreements per million of revenue. If you're in that neck of the woods, then I think you're doing great. You know, we can argue about whether it's 700, 800, 900, 1,000. If you're doing 700 per every million, I know you are at the top of the game here. If you're less than 700 per million and significantly less than 700 per million, you've got an opportunity to do a lot better by reinforcing and working with your entire staff. And it boils down to primarily the folks on the phone and your service techs. They drive your service agreement business. That's beyond the scope of this particular conversation. But that, if you're below that 700, certainly if you're below 500 per million, you've got an area where you can start making an impact in your business. Let's go back to the slide, please. Now, beyond the service agreement, when I talked about project management and one-day installs turning into 2- or 3-day installs, you need to be able to handle the additional complexity. Certainly one element of that is, I mean, I'd love to see an enterprise-wide management system. At a minimum, you have to have a solid customer relationship management system, CRM. To be able to track customers, to be able to track where leads are, where sales activity is, to be able to track where they are in the process of participating in a program. We've submitted this for approval. We've submitted this for financing. We've submitted the rebate application forms, what have you. You really have to be able to manage that whole process. And as soon as you start doing, 50 or hundreds, several hundred of these a year, you better have a good system to be able to manage that stuff. That's true, by the way, of your HVAC business and being able to build a service and maintenance agreement base. You have to be able to track all that and have a handle on who has an agreement, when you're supposed to be calling them to schedule that visit, et cetera, et cetera. You need an active training program. I talk a lot about training, even when I'm talking about marketing and sales. I know companies that spend well over $100,000 a year doing training. Some of it in-house, some of it outside, but it has to be an active part of who you are. Especially going back to that service tech and the ability for them to generate leads, that just doesn't happen by itself. That happens following a good, solid, about 3-month-long training process that you continue to reinforce on a weekly basis. If you're not doing that sort of training, the continuous reinforcement, it's not going to stick. You're not going to be selling the service agreements, and you're not going to be generating home performance leads. So figure out where the right place for you to start, but it's important to have that. And know your numbers. You have to know your existing numbers really well, because the other numbers are going to be different. And you're not going to recognize they're different if you don't even recognize what you're doing right now. Things like labor ratios and the percentage equipment cost baked into a typical project, those two numbers get almost flipped when we start talking about insulation air sealing. In an HVAC install, that equipment cost might be 30-35%. Labor might be down at 15%. You can almost flip those for insulation and air sealing. You get productivity ratios that look a lot different with insulation and air sealing. In fact, some HVAC contracts, I can't make those numbers work. I need to generate more revenue per labor hour. Well, no, you're thinking about it in terms of an HVAC install. The numbers are different on this side. It doesn't mean they're not profitable. They're different. But you have to understand what your numbers are to better appreciate the differences. You know, figuring out the benchmarks and knowing where you need to improve and all that. That's a whole nother story. Maybe we'll talk about that next month. Next slide, please. Several, Chris mentioned at the beginning the AC Quality Care Program. If I were an HVAC contractor in California, I would be extremely excited about this particular program. I mean, here they are helping me deliver service to customers. I can use that, especially if I'm thinking in terms of building my service agreement base. I can use those service calls by themselves as a way to do that. But PG&E's program has actually taken it a step further. They are incentivizing your customers to get on a maintenance agreement. Now, here is somebody else, the trusted third party in the form of PG&E, the utility, telling the customer that it makes sense for your potential customer to sign up on a maintenance agreement, and they're actually going to incentivize that. What a glorious opportunity to go back just a slide or two ago where I said, if you don't have a big service agreement base, you ought to be working on it. And if you have a big service agreement base, it becomes a whole lot easier to start moving into home performance. That's, I think, AC Quality Care in that particular program is potentially the gateway program, if you will, to something much bigger. If you're participating in the energy upgrade program, in not participating in AC Quality Care, think about it that way too, because this is only going to help what you are doing. It helps make it easier to install better things, do better service for your customers, and lock them into a maintenance agreement so you can continue that conversation, hopefully in perpetuity, not just for a year. You're going to go back for the next 20 years and keep chipping away at that $80,000 worth of opportunity. By the way, if you do it for 20 years, that $80,000 number goes up because eventually they're going to need that system replaced, even if it's a new system. 20 years from now, the clock resets on that one. Next, please. Just review. Home performance is a huge opportunity, and the biggest advantage you have is that customer base and your service techs who are already in homes, building on a relationship that you've already established. Now, it may not be a super strong relationship yet. It might be a new relationship, but you're already in the house, and you have a huge advantage that most other trades don't have if you want to take advantage of that. Next, please. The summary, I believe, and I believe it based on what we actually have seen. There's a reason that ABC Cooling, I don't know if anybody's announced 2013, but I was at the exchange last year when I know they were the volume winner for 2012. There's a reason for that. It's because they were building home performance on a solid HVAC foundation. I know there's several other HVAC contractors in PG&E's territory and down in the southern part of the state as well that are rapidly seeing what that opportunity is. Do better things for your customers, generate higher revenue, higher margins, more profitability, so on and so on. Next. This is the summary version. I can point you to case studies, blueprints on how to make this thing happen. If any beyond the scope of what we're able to cover in an hour and a half webinar, if there's materials you're looking for, you want to share, you want to talk about with the managers in the company, do a deeper dive, find out what some other contractors are going, just drop me a line. I'll point you to these resources. There's a growing number of them out there. that's all I've got right now, and we've got some time here to start answering your questions. I hope you have some.
We definitely do, Mike. So our first question is, says, as an HVAC contractor, how can I contract the air sealing and insulation, window changeout, radiant barrier type of work if I am not a general contractor?
Great question. And California has obviously very specific licensing requirements. You cannot do all this additional stuff with just your C20 license. So there's options. And boy, I deal in too many states right now to get all of the licenses straight, but I think what is C2, I think, is the insulation specialty. You can bring that in-house, and that allows you to deliver that stuff directly. You can get a B license to be able to contract that out. The laws and regulations in California are what they are, so you have to figure out a way to work within that. These challenges, though, are certainly surmountable. Find the right person in-house to go after the B license, hire the B license, get the insulation specialty. There's multiple pathways to doing it.
Okay, great. We have several more questions here. The next one says, we're currently working with an outside auditor, but not seeing a lot of work come of it. Is it for real?
Good question. Well, the short answer, yes, it's for real. Now, the outside auditor, this actually touches on to, maybe even goes back to the previous question as well. I like having this stuff all in-house for lots of reasons. I can train to it. I can reinforce it. With the third-party outside relationships, what's the driver? How often am I actually going to get that referral? If an auditor's getting paid to do an audit and there's no real skin in the game for them to move a customer forward, how actively are they actually, pushing the homeowner to move forward with a particular project? And again, I'm not a California law specialist here, but there's certain prohibitions against, paying people for referrals and that sort of thing that you need to be really careful of. That if you're using a third-party auditor, the big question is, what is their big incentive to steer business toward you? And the answer that I come up with most of the time is, well, there isn't one. That's why I like doing it in-house. I have salespeople in-house right now that they know how to sell. All I'm doing is teaching them how to sell a little bit more. So it is real. It's absolutely real. But you have to align the incentives and be able to train your folks on it, train your folks on your systems, train your folks on your pricing, train your folks on your sales process. And by pulling that in-house, you get to control it, and you're not relying on somebody else who may or may not have any particular sales skills or any incentive to actually drive work your way. I'd much rather own that entire process.
Great. Next question is, how do I know if my current customers are good candidates for an HVAC plus home performance model? Are there customer profiles that will tell me who is most likely to be interested?
Yes, but with a big caveat. Now, the data I've seen from around the country, most of the people moving forward, it looks like they're upper middle income, college educated, customers skewed slightly in the direction of female, but that's good info. Well, the upper middle income, Well, most of my customers are people that can afford to actually pay for the work, so that one's not that big of a revelation. And I caution you against putting too much, reading too much into that customer profile. I mean, the best customer profile is somebody who's my customer already. Because if I can get a lead set from one of my customers already, I'm closing, 80 to 90% of that business. So the best customer profile is the customers I have. And it becomes, I think, a tougher question. And few people have great answers here. Now, I know some folks doing some pretty neat things on new customer acquisition and lead generation. But the missed opportunity for an HVAC customer, again, is the existing customer base. And now I'm not as concerned about what the profile is. What I'm more concerned about is I go into their house, are there opportunities here to make this house perform better, and is the customer interested? So that's where you train your service techs to have a short conversation, and I mean very short because you're not turning them into your home performance sales force, just to tease out what the big issues are from a customer's perspective and whether there's big issues in the home. Then that is going to really drive things for you. And then go to the exchange next month, and Denny Duchesne and Peter are going to talk about other ways to market to both new customers and your existing customer base.
Up next, we have a question about marketing. If I expand my business model to add home performance services, how would I market that?
Oh boy, I'm going to punt on this one because I'm just going to go back to the way you ought to start is by training your service techs to look for that opportunity. It is, in addition to being a very effective way, it's even with a spiff paid to your service tech, and the spiff, hey, read Ron Smith's book. I'm not making this stuff up. It's not. It's eerily similar everywhere I go in the country. Maybe the service tech's getting a $25 spiff for every appointment that actually gets set, and I might define that as set and run. So, it's not just a bogus name. And then we'll give them $75 if it actually sells. If any project over, pick your number, whatever your threshold is, $1,500, $2,000. Any project above or whatever qualifying level you want, they get $75, or they get 1%, or they get 2%. Align it with whatever spiff program you have right now. These are the cheapest, most cost-effective leads. Get your feet wet this way. Take that very seriously, because you want that to be the foundation of your marketing campaign in any event. And then we'll sit down with Peter and Denny next month and talk about other ways to market as well.
We have a question about how to handle the sales staff. It says, should I have sales specialists who are trained in the home performance offer, especially since we have this great rebate program for home performance measures? Is that the best way to go to have a sales staff that will be effective in talking to homeowners about the value add measures?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. There isn't actually a single approach, and I suspect we'll get into this more at the exchange in a few weeks. There's one-person approaches. There are, which I would call an advisor, who's doing both the assessments and making the sale. There's two-person approaches with an auditor just doing the technical diagnostic part and a salesperson, and they get paired up. Both of them can work. A lot of it depends on who your existing personnel are, where you are in terms of your season, how much time you have to be training, what their interests are. From an existing HVAC company perspective, it happens almost every single time. Your top performing sales guys have almost zero interest in this at the beginning. So Very rarely are you convincing your top performer to give this a try. If they're selling $2 million worth of work and making their 10% commission, they're doing them. I'm making $200,000 a year. Why do I want to risk changing anything? And they don't, and it's a completely rational thing. So usually you start with, somebody a notch or two below your top performer. Sometimes you're bringing somebody, it's a new hire that you're training on the sales process. Sometimes you're teaming a seasoned salesperson up with the auditor because you want to keep them moving quickly. But this is a much longer conversation. But there's various pathways. You don't have to get locked into one. It makes a lot of sense to figure out who your existing personnel are, what their interests and capabilities are. It's tough to take a pure technician, especially somebody from sort of what I affectionately call, because I am one, I'm an energy geek too, but it's tough to take somebody from just an energy geek perspective with no background or interest in sales. In fact, some people even have an aversion to it, and turn them into a good salesperson. You can probably get them closing at 25%, because home performance is that good. You don't have to sell anything. You can be a terrible salesperson and still close at 25%. But you actually need somebody who has an interest and ability in sales. And again, now we get into the one person versus two person. That's a longer conversation. Maybe we have a follow-up webinar or dive into that at the exchange.
Great. We have a question about whether to bring service in-house or subbing it out, particularly asking for a recommendation about insulation.
Okay. Great question. As I kind of hinted at, or more than hinted at, with the auditor question back at the beginning here, my preference is to bring it in-house. Now, yes, there's some licensing issues that you have to work through in California, but I like having it in-house, and it actually kind of parallels sort of Ron Smith's thinking with the maintenance technician. You're training insulation and air sealing technicians who are generally, you have to train them, doing this stuff right is important, but the on-ramp to training an insulation and air sealing technician is shorter and faster than it is for training a service technician or even an installer, for example. So you can hire somebody, and you're hiring them kind of based on their character and their integrity and that stuff, not necessarily based on their insulation and air sealing experience. You can quickly train them on that if they know their way around a home and hand tools. We can train them on this stuff very quickly. Now you bring somebody on board who becomes indoctrinated in your company culture, because you've hired them based on their ability to fit in. They're wearing your company uniforms. They're driving your trucks. They have the appearance standards. They know how to take care of customers the way that you insist they be taken care of. When you use subs, that last bit in particular is a huge challenge. Time and time again, I've seen contractors try to sub this. That doesn't mean you can't find a good sub, but it's not necessarily an easy thing. There may be folks participating in the energy upgrade program, for example, that you could partner with. What I'm looking for, in addition to the ability to figure out the pricing so we can sell this and make that process all as smooth and seamless for the customer as possible, because that's how we're going to get more sales and bigger sales, is they have to take care of the customer the same way I do. Because if something goes wrong, I own that problem. The customer is going to think poorly of me if the insulation sub tracked dirt in the house or left a mess behind or made too much noise or was smoking or swearing or whatever. So I like having it in-house, in part for the customer service, but in part I like to have my insulation air sealing crew or crews overtime in-house because of August. What do I mean by because of August? Well, think about what happens in your busiest season, the season when the phone is ringing more than you can even answer it. And you'd love to be able to have some additional quality folks on staff, although it's really hard to find quality people at that time of year because every other company's looking for them too, because you're all busier than you can possibly be. You're turning down opportunities. Well, if you have insulation and air sealing folks on staff, you have got an in-house labor pool that you can shift to that emergency replacement scenario. So now, that doesn't mean your insulation air sealers are trained as installers, but they can certainly be shifted over and be helpers. They can help manage the site and help with the pulling the box and any demolition that's required. They can be cross-trained on duct repair, duct replacement pretty easily too. So you've got in-house folks that you can shift over to your HVAC department whenever you need to. And it's really easy to do that because few people have what I call our insulation emergencies. You know, it's August. I need my house insulated by Friday. Nah, you know, oh yeah, we'll schedule that one for the end of September when things slow down a little bit. And in the meantime, the guys that I've trained that know customer satisfaction, that occasionally help out with my install crew, and they're going to learn more about this and have a career path that they can move to over time as well. But these guys are going to be helping me do a better, faster job on the install so I can get more of them in during August, shake the money tree season. You know, that, for me, along with the customer service, just makes it's too compelling not to have that in-house.
Mike, we have about 3 minutes left, and there was one more question, if we can squeeze it in. I run a small family-run company, and I wonder how can I make the P model work for us? Do you have advice for small companies?
Go back to the core HVAC advice that I gave a few slides back. Start working on your customer base. Put a maintenance agreement plan in place. That's going to help your small family-run HVAC business. You'll be able to deliver that business better than you're doing right now. Train your techs to first generate that additional HVAC business. Train them, especially with a smaller business. You know, you don't want to be overwhelmed by leads. So this is a good throttle. You can control the ability and how much you're emphasizing it with your service tech to bring in those additional leads. You know, you don't have to go out and spend $20,000 a month on a radio campaign. It's your service techs. It's low cost. It's in-house. It's very manageable. And then you'll probably be thinking about, small means different things to different people, so I can't respond to your specific question in a webinar format here, but maybe you're hiring a technician who's going to have the ability to assist you on duct repair, duct replacement, insulation, air sealing, that sort of thing, so you can start adding that stuff in. If it's real small, you may be in a situation where you're not generating enough volume where it's going to make sense to actually do the installation. What I've seen other companies, in California, you still need the proper license, but you can train your technician to, maybe he's just doing duct repair replacement in the air sealing. Now you can go out and hire any insulation company who's going to insulate at some ridiculously low price of 70 cents a square foot because you've done all the important stuff, the air sealing before they come back and start blowing insulation in. So there's absolutely some ways to step into it. Going back to the key point, start by really strengthening your HVAC business with a good CRM system, a good maintenance agreement base and a good in-house training program to be able to capitalize on both those things.
Thank you, Mike, very much. We're right at time. I just wanted to remind everyone that on February 25th, we will have a part 1 of our practical guide to home energy financing webinar, so stay tuned for e-blasts about that from Build It Green. In addition, as Mike has mentioned throughout the presentation, on March 4th, there is the contractor exchange for the participating contractors in the Energy Upgrade California Home Upgrade Program. We hope to see you there. It's going to be a great event. Mike will be there along with Denny Duché and Peter Trost, and a lot of good information and mentoring at that event. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to be at the webinar today, and to thank you, Mike, for a really excellent and very rich presentation with a lot of resources and tools to consider. So I hope everyone has a great day and hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody.